Would you date someone at work?
Or more importantly, should you date someone at work?
I think Kyle and I have very different opinions about this.
We do, but mine is the correct one.
I don't think that's true. Let's get into it. So we'll get into office romance in a minute. But Kyle, these past few weeks, we've been spending a lot of time talking about where I can level up at work. I think it's time you do some self-improvement too.
Fair enough. Honestly, sometimes it feels like the pace of change at work is outpacing my skills, and I know I'm not alone. These days, capabilities matter more than credentials. That's why I've been upskilling with Udemy.
Oh yeah? What have you been focusing on?
I'm doubling down on my chief of staff role, so I started a corporate strategy course that has over 30,000 reviews. That kind of credibility is what I need to sharpen my edge at work.
Makes sense. Whether it's AI, data science, communication, or leadership, Udemy guides you through the learning experience and you get access to their expert instructors to ask questions to real humans. The results? The skills you gain are practical and built for the real world.
Exactly. And with Udemy's annual subscription, I can keep building the right skills whenever I need them. It's flexible and makes it easy to stay ahead.
So if you want to level up, check out udemy.com/personal plan. That's udemy.com/personal-plan and use code PMLE14 at checkout for a free 14-day trial.
That's udemy.com/personal-plan, code PMLE14. Your next chapter starts here. Kaila, there has been a bit of a buzz around office romance gone bad lately. If you recall the CEO at the Coldplay concert that blew up online, having an affair with the HR lady.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
Yeah.
That was a few weeks ago. No,
that was a few weeks ago, but an incredible story. Still thinking about it.
Still thinking about it. I see that.
The biggest crime was going to the Coldplay concert. Not a doubt about that.
Chris Martin, I still love you.
Yeah. Yellow is a banger. Okay. And then the Nestle CEO, Laurent Free. Mm-hmm. I have been practicing my French.
I hear it.
Laurent Free, Nestle CEO, fired for an undisclosed romantic relationship with a direct subordinate. Nestle is a massive multinational company. That is a big deal. Fired for an undisclosed romantic relationship with a subordinate. So it got us thinking, what are the rules of office romance? Should you date people at work? Should you not even think about it? Do you disclose it? It feels like this is the right time to have this conversation.
Yeah, sure. Let's chat about it. I have some big feelings. I know you do too, and I'm excited to get into them.
Yes. Well, first I want to address the elephant in the room. Me and Kaila are dating.
That's not funny. It's not true.
I'm kidding. We're both happily married.
Happily.
So before we get into these office romance rules, and I want to talk about like kind of the water that we're swimming in when it comes to how people are meeting, because work has always been a place that people have met, but it's fluctuated throughout time. So I want to go back to the 1950s. Most people were meeting, it was like very geographic, through friends, family, and then where you went to high school or like elementary school or college. Because there wasn't online, you were kind of restricted to like the people around you.
And also women famously weren't in the office at that time.
That's a very good point, yes. Yes. So that peaked. Meeting people through friends peaked in the 1950s at about 40% of all relationships. In the 1980s is when work peaked, and that actually hit 25% of people found their partner through work in the 1980s. In the 2010s now, so fast forward 30 years to the 1980s, online shot up to 25% of people meeting online. And if you look at the chart, right, it's nothing. And then the internet comes on, and about 10 years later, this line is up and to the right. I've seen some stats that suggest it's closer to 40% right now. And because more people are meeting online, naturally, people are meeting less in other areas. Work has dropped from a peak of 25% to a low of 15% in the 2010s. Maybe that's a little lower now. I have some predictions of where that will go, but that is the scene. So around 15% of people are meeting at work. How'd you meet your partner, Kaila?
That's not important. Doesn't matter for this conversation.
Oh, I think it's very, very important for this conversation.
Yes, me and my husband did meet at work, and that does not change my very strongly held opinion.
Okay, so let's give your opinion, and then I will clearly demonstrate why it's wrong.
Okay, do not find love or date or hook up at work. Do not do it if you can help it. Please, it is a very, very bad idea.
Kayla, let me take you back to the first sentence you just said, which is, I met my partner at work.
I am the exception. I am not the rule. I cannot, in good conscience, advocate for other people to do this.
This is what I feel like everyone says, like, oh yeah, like I did this, but like, don't do what I did.
Yes, and I stand by it.
You met the love of your life at work.
Whatever.
Why are you?
It could have gone so poorly.
We'll talk about that, but I don't think you need to actively discourage people or say never do this.
I think
when there's plenty of examples where it worked out and it's great. I think, not saying it's always the best option. There's definitely a respectful, responsible way to go about it. But to put it off the table feels a little short-sighted to me.
I am not putting it off the table. I have 4 very strict constraints that we can go over now or we can go over later. But I feel like the reality is, yes, there are some examples. Probably you know somebody who found their husband or their wife at work, and that's great. That is not showing all of the horrible, dramatic situations that have happened at work that don't end in long-term happy relationships.
Correct. But these other ways of meeting people, they also don't always end in long-term happy relationships.
Of course.
I think the point that we'll discuss here is that work has some consequences.
Yes.
If it doesn't go right, that you meet someone online and it doesn't go right.
You never have to
go
see
your separate
them
ways.
again.
You meet someone at work and all of a sudden, and it doesn't go right, you know, you're seeing your ex in conference room 3C every day.
Yeah.
Not ideal for any party involved. And obviously worse things can happen too. So I want to talk about that. But first, let's start with some kind of personal anecdotes, because you said you met your partner at work. Like, walk us through what was going through your mind when that kind of popped up on the radar for you.
Okay. I mean, so
well, I'm saying you had to navigate this situation in real time.
Yeah,
so
it was
like,
really.
What were your considerations? When you were going through
it was very complex because we weren't on the same team, but we were in the same division. It was a 20-person division. We were in the same room every single day. We were chatting. It was between when we met and became friends and when we started formally dating was probably like 8 or 9 months.
Okay.
It was my first job out of college. I had no intention of finding anyone at that.
Yeah.
And I also knew that this job was temporary. So it didn't feel necessary. I was a little bit more willing to have to cross that line because I knew that if things went really, really horribly, I would leave regardless, you know? And so
I'm getting out of this company either way. So.
Yes. And so another element of this that I think is probably important is we were in a city where there wasn't a lot of young people. We were in a very high intensity situation. Our analyst class was, 15 to 20 people. There were 4 women in that analyst class, and 2 of them ended up married to other people at the company.
Yeah.
So that's a 50% hit rate. It's like basically an incubator for relationships because you're not seeing anybody else. You're working long hours. You're forced to spend time together, every single day for 80 hours a week. You're not really meeting anyone else. So you're kind of like, all right. And we literally joked that it was an incubator. And then when we moved to New York, it was like we were already pretty solid because we spent so much time together.
This is a really important point that I want to hit on. And it was kind of a thesis I had coming into this, which is the more intense the work environment, particularly if it's like your first job out of college, I have a belief that it's like contact theory. Like the more time you spend with someone, you tend to like them more. I think most people are like fine people, they're cool. And if you get to know them, you will like them. So if you're in a high intensity, high work hour environment, you're going to like the people you work with for the most part. The second thing is work is this filter that tends to filter by values. Like if you all work in banking, if you all work in AmeriCorps, which is where I worked right after college, like you tend to subscribe to a set of beliefs around life because you found that path. So you're probably pretty similar people. And then I think the most important part is that people bond over like high intensity shared experiences.
Trauma.
Trauma bonding, obviously a real thing. But I think when you're first out of college and you're going through there is that element of like, wow, like this is wild. I almost need someone to like decompress with and talk about. It's going to be my colleagues because they have the shared experience of it. You're spending so much time together. It makes sense why you'll find someone who you hit it off with and maybe you like more than just a colleague. I had a very similar experience in AmeriCorps, which opposite side of the money-making capabilities of banking, but very similar, high intensity, long hours, really emotionally like intense work. And it's the same way. Like AmeriCorps is like an incubator for like the wedding industry because everyone was coupling up because you had this shared experience. It was hard to talk about it with other people in the same detail, and you just spent so much time at work. So I think there's certain work environments that are more conducive to potential partnering up than others.
Yeah, I agree. I think, however, that is not your current wife, right?
Correct.
Like, was there any concerns when you were in AmeriCorps, like that could have gone wrong? Or were there examples that you saw where it went wrong?
I don't have any examples of where it went wrong. I think it's tough. Like, I think the issue with dating at work is like, there are some potentially negative consequences, which I want to talk about if things don't go well. But for the most part, I hope that like people can go about their business like responsibly and respectfully and like end on good terms. So I didn't have a fear like, oh, this is going to go a disaster. Like, we weren't on the same team. We worked in different schools. Like, we're not a manager-managee relationship. So we were just friends for a very long time, and we were doing very similar work. And then we started dating. And I was never worried about the downside effects because I just trusted that this wouldn't end in a disaster, and maybe that's naive of me.
Yes, it is, but also I'd like to point out that it's high pressure, but also there's an end date, right? Like the expectation is you work for 2 years with AmeriCorps, and then you go on to other things. That also de-risks.
You go on to podcasting.
That also de-risks the downsides a little bit, or that de-risks the relationship.
Like, if it goes wrong, like, you probably only have 3 months left anyway. So
or like, this isn't necessarily going to impact your career forever because this wasn't your forever job.
I see. So maybe that's like a good thing to consider is if you're working at a company that you have aspirations to be at for a very long time and you want to climb the ladder, if you introduce a relationship, it does introduce a level of volatility that you have to accept. And if things go wrong, it could derail your career plans. Can we
play this out for a second? Can you humor me for 1 minute?
Yeah, we'll play it out. We'll play out your relationship that ended in a happy marriage.
No. We can talk because I really do. I feel really strongly about this. Like, when we were working together, it was unpleasant at best.
Okay.
And so I'm happy to talk about that. But let's talk about you, right? Not you, Kyle, you, the listener. Let's say you meet a cute coworker, right? And you're kind of excited. There's kind of vibes. You're kind of flirting a little bit. And you're like,
the Google Meet emojis.
Google Meet emojis are popping off. And you're like, wow. Like, oh my gosh, you did the celebrate emoji at the same time that I did. Are we soulmates? And you're kind of feeling the vibes.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, at happy hours, like, we're kind of like gravitating towards each other. Like, there's got to be something here. And then you decide to start seeing each other. Maybe it was in a not great way. Maybe it was a hookup. Maybe it's serious. When you are working with somebody, they are showing you the most buttoned up, professional version, ideally, of themselves.
Okay.
So this side of them. What if, this guy's friends are really weird. Or like, this girl has a really unnatural obsession with K-pop group BTS.
Nothing wrong with that.
Like, this guy doesn't clip his toenails, and you didn't know that because he always wears closed-toed shoes at work.
That felt personal. I
don't know if you clip your toenails because I've never seen your feet. Like, there were things that people keep hidden at work that you might not. You might have to learn the hard way, where you might get that interaction if you're friends or you're meeting online or whatever. So now all of a sudden you have to figure out, or even worse, what if, you hook up with your coworker and he didn't think you were exclusive and you did?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you see him flirting with somebody else at the happy hour.
Yeah.
You're like, what's going on? Now you have to navigate heartbreak or having a hard conversation with a potential significant other in a way that is also maintaining a professional relationship.
Yeah. It's a balancing act.
Bad.
Yeah.
That is bad. You don't know everything about this person when you are just working with them.
Right.
And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show.
I think this is very fair. I agree with everything you've said, maybe minus the slander for K-pop.
I don't know.
But I will say my personal perspective is, again, it's hard to like stuff feelings down, or like if there's a vibe, there's a vibe. Sure. But I would say that I would let that marinate a lot longer if it's in a work setting, because like you are paid to do a job. There needs to be a level of professionalism in the workplace for very right reasons that safeguard a lot of like, people. And so like, you don't want to be like way too like, oh my gosh, celebrate emoji at the same time. I'm going to go Slack them and ask them out.
Right.
Do not do that. It feels like because there's potentially more consequences and you're not in an environment where like people are expecting that to happen, that you need to be a lot more sensitive around this issue. Let it marinate, maybe like double or triple the length that you would normally in an environment outside of work. Yeah. And I would say like you probably want to shift some of that discovery of like, do they clip their toenails to like outside of work. Like to me, what would normally happen is, okay, you go to happy hours at work. Oh, like this person's cool. Then maybe you start hanging out as a group and like they're just a friend. Yeah. And then like you're meeting them now, not really at work. You met at work, but you've become friends outside of work. That feels like you're de-risking the relationship in a way that's probably healthy and respectful for all parties.
Yeah, I think so. I like the idea of de-risking. I think that's one of the things I wrote down was literally de-risk it. But the my big takeaway and why I feel so strongly about this is that relationships are always a gamble. They're hard enough without adding the extra layer of your job and your career to that bet that you're making.
Yeah.
And so if you feel like, you can do everything right and still have a relationship go horribly. Like that's just like the nature of relationships. Yeah. And then if you have to see that person or work with that person every single day, even if you've done everything right, I think it's really, really hard and you should be extremely careful about how you approach a relationship with somebody you work with.
Yes. Agreed. Counterpoint is if you had to pick an environment where you're likely to meet people that you probably have, again, some of these shared values with, work is up there. I don't think it's number one. Like if you have hobbies and you're rock climbing all the time, like you meet people out. But to me, that filter is something that's pretty interesting, depending on the industry you work in, where you're just likely going to meet people that have similar interests, similar values, or at a similar point in their career. And you get to know them over a repeated length of time that maybe has a little bit of a de-risking effect as well. And so while I agree with everything you're saying, I think, again, just discounting, and I'll never date anyone at work. If you look at how other people are meeting, and what I hear from friends all the time is like, I'm so sick of the apps.
Sure.
I don't want to be on them anymore. Okay, well, if you can't meet someone at work and you can't meet someone at apps, and we're now more alone than ever, people aren't going out as much as they used to, like, where are you going to meet someone? And so again, you have to do it respectfully, and we've talked about a lot of the downsides, but I think keep it on the table. Just be very, 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 very careful with it.
I disagree. So I think if you come into...
You're saying take it off the table.
I think take it off the table.
Then I need you and Ryan to divorce immediately.
No, this is what I'm saying. Take it off the table. Don't even have it as a potential little thought.
Open the drawer in your nightstand, put it down there, close the drawer.
Do not think about it as an option. Genuinely, it should not be an option. And then if you meet someone that is interesting, you still keep it off the table. And then once you've de-risked it enough, once you feel confident that this is someone that's worth risking some of those things for, you understand the downsides, and then that is when you bring it onto the table.
Okay.
I think if you come into work being like, I don't know, gonna find my lifetime partner here, then you're probably gonna make some mistakes.
It's your orientation. They're like, so what are you most excited about for working at morning? But you're like, probably gonna find the love of my life.
Like,
already started.
No, you probably won't,
It's like, well, you are now fired.
Yeah, like you have to, like, it has to be such a high bar for you to even think of it as a possibility.
Yeah.
Granted, I was 22. I was not thinking like this. Like, I didn't care. I was like, I'm gonna be out of here. I don't like Jacksonville, Florida. I'm gonna be out of here in a minute. Whatever.
Yeah.
And it ended up working out for me, but that doesn't mean that like
it will work
it would work out for everyone, and that I would advocate for that.
Yeah. Okay. Fair points. There's a few things I think we need to talk about when we're talking about kind of pursuing office relationships. First one is power dynamics, which is your example. You weren't manager managee.
No, we were in the same analyst class.
You were in the same analyst class.
We weren't working on the same team.
Yeah. When I joined AmeriCorps, same class, different schools. Like there was no like we could come into the relationship knowing that like we both were in it for the relationship. There was not like this additional benefit at work. And obviously the Coldplay CEO and like the affair is obviously a bad issue. But there's like I just want people to be cognizant that like there's massive power dynamics at work, and that's where you can get into a lot of trouble as well. So it's another layer of caution that you need to have around this topic.
Yeah, and I actually have a few friends who dated their direct boss.
Yeah.
And I'll speak like anonymized-ish about one of them. They were working together for 2 years, and it like their relationship grew, and they ended up having a serious relationship. They told their company, and my friend was moved to a different division, and now they're married and they have a kid, and like it's great.
Yeah.
So there are ways to do it. I think it's like, okay, how long are you keeping that a secret from the company? And like, how serious do you have to be before you disclose it?
Yeah.
All this stuff gets really, really gray and complicated. So again, it's like, you have to not think of it as an option.
And I think just to reinforce, like if you are the boss in that situation, like I think everyone that wants a long-term healthy relationship wants to feel like both parties are coming into it just for the other person. And there's not this other weird dynamic at play that's like, feels like someone can't say no, obviously.
Right.
And so like, that's a real concern, and you should be careful about that. And that brings me to my next point, which you just mentioned, was disclosure. Like, I actually don't know like what the official like policy is, but it feels like that is something that ought to be disclosed to protect both of you as soon as it's a serious thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, not legal advice.
No, I think it's also, it depends on your company.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's like a broad federal mandate on when you should and should not be reporting. But I think that it does protect you, because if that gets found out, and it's found out in a way that could be like exposing you to potential risks professionally, right? Which is like, oh, you worked with this person and turns out you guys were actually dating. Why didn't you choose this other person? Well, if it was known, then you could be like, okay, yes, but everyone knew that was the case.
Yes.
So it gives you a little additional like coverage protection. I do agree that that's important, especially the higher up you go. As soon as you have any semblance of power, even if the power dynamics are completely even between you and your partner, like anything that erodes your credibility as a manager or a higher up at work is something that you want to be protected against.
Yeah.
So that's just another element.
It's a great point. And yeah, like when you're like a 22-year-old first year,
like nobody cares if you're hooking up,
It's like, we don't give a shit.
Yeah, do whatever you want.
Like, you have no power at all.
Yeah, but like as soon as you're running AmeriCorps, then it's like, okay, maybe you shouldn't,
Stakes are higher. Yeah. And the level of responsibility and your mandate is more
much higher.
Yeah, it's much higher. The last, maybe not a rule, but advice, and this is just good advice, I think, for every day. Never be the main character.
I say that all the time. I said that yesterday.
I hear this on Twitter all the time. They're like, everyone's
that.
like, every day there's one main character on Twitter, and your goal is to never be it.
Yeah.
I feel the same as for like happy hours and like office parties.
Yes.
It's like, just never be the main character. That is just,
I stand by that 100%.
Yes, that is, I think, always good advice, and particularly around this topic. Like, again, it's gray, and there's like, but you have a professional reputation you really, really, really want to protect, and you should just keep that in mind always when you are even thinking about this potential area.
100%. And that goes for basically anything that could, like holiday parties, work parties, do not be the main character.
Yeah.
Like, whatever you do like, because people bond by talking shit about other people. That's just like human nature.
Well, maybe that's just you, Kayla.
It's human nature. I've seen it played out over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And you just don't want to be the person that everyone's talking about. And so do what you have to. If you, fall in love or whatever at work, great. But do what you have to not be the main character.
Yeah.
Like, figure that out. I have so many anecdotes. Another reason why I'm so against this is because even when we were, my husband and I, we were completely equal in terms of footing. We did everything right.
Well, you were a better analyst, of course.
Obviously, there was a lot of imbalances in that. I was just better generally, but even then, it was truly awful. Like when people started to find out, and that's not something that you can really control. It is. There were so many relationships inside of that company, primarily from people who came in as analyst class, co-workers or whatever. And yet, like, I had a mentor who I really respected and trusted, And he tried to get me to move from my team to his team about 2 months before I was going to quit and move to New York. And obviously I knew I was going to quit and move to New York. He didn't. And it was at that point, it was out in the open. We had been together for, half a year or whatever. And I said, no, I'm not interested in moving to your team. And he said, I don't remember the exact quote, but it was basically like, he's still going to like you even if you're not in the same room with him.
Yeah.
And at that point, I didn't know that everybody knew. And like knowing that my mentor was like thinking that I was making a career decision
also
based
a messed
on
up thing to say,
a man.
Yeah.
Like I would never do that. I was quitting. I was moving to New York. Like, what are you talking about? And then, again, anonymized, but like somebody else who was kind of higher up and had some power over both me and Ryan trying to break us up when we announced that we were moving to New York and we're quitting. Because it was just kind of our fault. We quit at the same time. We took our boss out for a walk and we were like, it's not you, it's us. We're both leaving and moving to New York. And he then took, Ryan for another walk and was like, she's just using you to move to New York. Like, now's your chance to get out of this.
I'm glad you left that company.
100%. But it was like, and obviously, my husband told me, was like, that was a weird conversation. And I was like, what are you doing, dude? Like you're a manager and you're trying to break up a relationship to like prevent someone from leaving the company.
Yeah.
So it's just like, and we did everything right. And it was still super annoying. And maybe that's more indicative of a toxic workplace than it is of like, all workplace relationships. I think there's probably experiences that have been nothing but great.
Right.
That doesn't mean that yours is guaranteed to be great.
Yeah, I think the stories you're telling bring up another point that we didn't address I think is really important, which is perception. And even if you're all above board, it's a great relationship. People, because you all work with them and they see you, there's going to be people that have incorrect perceptions about what is going on. I'm not saying don't do the relationship, and I'm not, but like that's just something to know too. Like it is another risk factor when you're thinking about an office relationship. And so my big takeaway is like you probably need a higher degree of confidence, and you need a longer period of time to like assess if this is worth it, if it is a workplace thing, than if it is outside the work. For all of the reasons that we've listed.
Another thing that we haven't talked about yet that I think is very important is there's going to probably be some differences in perception based on your gender.
Yeah.
And like, I think that I got a lot of shit from, my higher ups about my relationship with this. And the perception was that, I was making career decisions because of a man, where that never was
no one was
asked
telling Ryan.
Of Ryan.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think as a woman, it sucks to be like, you gotta be better, but you have to be aware that if there's a bad breakup or if things go wrong, like, the biases of a normal relationship and the biases of the workplace can be combined, squared, doubled, and given to the next person.
Super bias.
Yeah. And it's just like, you just have to be aware. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but you just need to be aware of that. And I do think that it's a very important element, and sometimes women can be incorrectly or unfairly penalized for the same workplace relationship that a man is having.
Yeah, it's a very salient point.
And if I may just kind of recap my 4 little rules, because I've got my 4 rules.
Play us out. What are the rules?
Play us out. So I think that it is a bad idea. Do not do this. Do not shit where you eat. You should not want a workplace relationship. There are 4 conditions where I think it's okay to start considering it. First, short-term employment. Whether it's a defined project, you're a contractor, whatever, or this is not your forever job, then I think, okay, it's not like you're trying to have a 40-year career here. I understand that you might be more willing to entertain an illicit relationship at that point. Number 2, you have de-risked this decision as much as possible. So you know them well enough. You aren't going from only seeing each other in meetings to dating, right? There's been this long exploratory friendship where now you know what their feet look like, you know things about them that you wouldn't know at work. And you've de-risked it well enough where you're like, okay, yes, they could still surprise me. I don't know what they're like in a relationship, but I do know that I know them well enough that I can probably guess. And that was one thing that Ryan and I transparently were really nervous about is because we started seeing each other like 3 months into knowing each other. And it was then another 4 or 5 months before we started formally dating. There was a lot of like, we don't know each other well enough to know if this is going to blow up in our faces.
Yeah.
And so don't do that. Number 3, it is not an impulsive decision. This is something that you have thought about. It is not because you have been at a company happy hour for 4 hours and you guys accidentally made eye contact as you were both walking out of the room. You know, like this cannot be impulsive. You should not be impulsively diff-mowing one of your coworkers. Diff-mow is dance floor makeout for anyone who doesn't know that and wasn't a teenager in the 2010s. Okay. Finally, you fully understand the downsides, right? Basically, this person, you understand how it could go poorly. You understand what the risks are. And for this specific person, it is worth it to take the risk and see.
Incredible for constraints or rules.
I think they're perfect, actually. And you should have no pushback on any of them.
Well, Kayla, I think we did the impossible. We talked about office romance without getting canceled.
I hope so.
I hope.
TBD.
I mean, this could be the last.
I don't think we said anything offensive.
This could be the last podcast we ever do, so it's really nice knowing you.
Sick. Love that.
Should we roll the credits?
Let's do it.
Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Uchenna Ogu.
Our president is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Just be careful out there, folks.